Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 148. Today is Thursday, July 18th. I'm Van Burnett, joined as always by Steve Giswelli. I guess happy All-Star break to those who celebrate and don't freak out checking their lineups and not seeing stats like we all do. It was interesting. I had to watch highlights, Steve. I did not watch it. I had a client event down in St. Louis. I am pretty wiped out. But I caught all the highlights. I caught the awful uniforms, especially the American League ones, I will add. But yeah, it is good to be back and thinking about the second half of the season, which is what the show topic is. Talking bold predictions for second half. Not sure we've ever done it, Steve, and it's a great topic and a great one to roll in with our chalkboard picks at the start of the year. We're doing a little chalkboard check-in and assessing. It's like a midterm report on your grades here to see how we're doing. Some of them look great. Other ones look awful. It will be fun to tackle that in the back half of the show. But yeah, first half, talking bold predictions in the second half. And for whatever reason, Steve, I feel like first half, second half splits is kind of home sweet home for WAF when it comes to show topics. And I don't know why, but it's going to be a fun one to get into and also to look back on at the end of the year. How's it going, man?
It's good. I did not watch much of the All-Star break, All-Star game either. It was my anniversary yesterday, so we were out to dinner. They did have a TV on with it on. And
Lauren,
Lauren did comment that the AL jerseys were horrific. She didn't mind the NL ones. I did see that there's some chatter that they're considering going back to individual and team jerseys about next year, which honestly, that's like my favorite thing about the All-Star game is guys wearing their own jerseys. It just does not seem right, especially in baseball for whatever reason, I guess, because that's always the way it's been.
I kind of feel like that in the NBA. I feel like that for hoops too. Like I remember growing up seeing
it's
Kobe
better.
Wearing Lakers and Jordan wearing Bulls, you know. Anyway.
I agree. I think that should be the case for all-star games.
All sports.
Just, wear home and away, dark and whites. But yeah, I mean the Ohtani was awesome, but home run derby was good too. It's just it's not enough to get me through these 5 days without baseball, right? Like I keep on going to the Score app and I did nice like there's less days to scroll over to get the games, but
for sure. I did like the ticker at the bottom of the home run derby this year, where it was just like a very user-friendly watch. I felt that you could kind of see how many outs they had left, how this guy hit 4 homers in a row. So, it's fine. It's in a much better place than some all-star games. Again, not to keep going back to NBA.
Yeah, I enjoy the home run. I enjoy the home run derby. I honestly think the baseball all-star festivities are the best of any sport.
Agree.
At least ones that I actually turn on. Maybe it's because there's nothing else going on during those times. That's why I feel that way. But the new format for the home run derby was pretty good. Maybe the opening rounds were a little bit too long. And you can get to like some knockout rounds quicker. But it was pretty good and it was an interesting watch. But glad we're a little bit closer to actual baseball again. Nice reset. Hopefully a lot of my guys get healthy, or these players feel rested and rejuvenated after these 5 days. So excited to get back into it. But it's a good opportunity to do this topic. I like this. This is a good idea. I'm surprised we haven't done this before. Just as far as a midpoint check-in and do something cool. I know we didn't write I think this was the first year both of us didn't write our bold prediction articles. We sort of just gave a few on the show. So why not add to it to sort of make up for that front? Give some bold predictions for the second half too.
Yeah. I think it's a new tradition, I would say. And
for
real
sure.
quick, before we get into the guys, Steve, I think it's also a good time to just get a gut check, at least on the home league, because I know we're living in purgatory a little bit on NFBC. But home league, I'm 4th. I'm 7 games out of first place, 5.5 out of a bye for the first week of the playoffs. how's the home league going for you on the midway mark here, if you will, midway?
It's good. I'm in third, 14 games back of first, 13 and a half back of a bye. So like first and second are separated within a half game. Fantrax does a nice thing though, where you can see the roto standings too. And I am in second in the roto standings. The first team, it's a half game back of first. It has 124.5 points. Shout out Joey, loyal listener to the podcast. I myself has 124, so just half point back. And then the first place team at 121. So it's pretty true to the standings. I think the team actually in fourth is in fourth too in the head-to-head standing. Sorry, no, they're tied for fourth. So it's pretty true to the road.
Yeah,
it's nice when that sort of balances out with head-to-head.
So we're both doing well. I will say my and I promise you I did not do this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
All three of my bold predictions are on like my most important teams.
Okay,
now,
so you're manifesting these guys to do well or perform based on your most important teams. I love it. I have a few guys too, so.
Okay, well, let's get in. We'll do a little
and real quick. NFBC, I'm definitely doing the best I have done in these leagues in any of the years that I played with them. That being said, it's pretty mid. In my I'm 6th in TGFBI, 91st overall, so that's kind of skewed. Like it's a good league that I'm in. I'm considering I'm that high in the overall ranks and still just 6th. With 97 points in the league, 97.5 points. So. And then the rest of the leagues, I'm in 7th in all of them, including our draft champions, which we were in first there for a while.
Well,
still in first in Razzball, but my goal is to finish above these numbers for the second half. Whereas in the past, I've kind of, if a team's been in 12th, I haven't paid as much attention that I have to it. So I want to finish strong in those leagues and finish, inside the top half rather than just like exactly at the halfway point for those teams. So we'll see how I do there.
Yeah, I respect that. I'm 7, 8 in our listener league, but that's tight. 6th in TGFBI. Raz Slam with you, I'm in 7th. So did you say you're in first?
I'm in first, but 49th overall. And I think the cut was last weekend, right? So the top 2 teams advance. And then the third place team gets into like a console, like a side pool within a bit. If you win the league, you get put back in the main pool. So starting this week after the All-Star break, right, it'll be a kind of a different league.
We'll keep us posted. Oh yeah. Steve, I am familiar after last season.
Oh yeah. You should be the one explaining it to me. Yeah.
No, it's sheer evidence that me being one in the overall this time last year was probably a little bit of dumb luck. But let's get into some predictions here, some bold predictions that we're hoping luck is on our side. And Steve, my first one is a little bit of a segue of where we left off last show, because I think you might have given me a Taj Bradley and we talked about Nick Pivetta. And Pivetta is one that I was, all over the record. I mean, we both liked him, but I was kind of planting the flag in the preseason on Pivetta. We saw a really good Pivetta for like one start. He had some weird injuries. He came back and did not have his slider at all. And then when we get back to the last 3 starts, he has been lights out before All-Star break. So a 191 FIP and a 12.5 strikeout per 9 in his last 3 outings going into the All-Star break. What jumped out at me, Steve, is like just process-wise, looking for bold predictions here. One thing I did was, rather than kind of go to Savant, where some of those metrics and little indicators have some flaws. Being a company man, wanted to go out to the PLV and see what some of the top numbers were saying. So PLA, which is like the ERA for pitch level value, Nick Pivetta is number 9 amongst all pitchers there to date in PLA. And then the other stat that's great is that quality pitch percentage of guys that are just basically making what PLV deems as a quality pitch. And Nick Pivetta is the number 1 starting pitcher when it comes to that quality pitch percentage. So add that in with what we saw last year, the second half of last year from Pivetta when he had the whirly bird going. That was 102 strikeouts and under 74 innings. Yeah, it's enough for me, especially with the Red Sox. Clearly have a good thing going on with the pitch coaching with guys like Crawford and Houck. So across the board, I would just not be shocked at all if Pivetta completely broke out. And the bold prediction is that he is a top 10 starting pitcher the rest of the way. And that's a guy who's SP 49 right now on the list. So hopefully that is bold enough. I know that he is, we saw him do it last year, but right now he's still sitting on a 4.18 ERA and a 1.14 whip. So that is bold prediction number one. Your thoughts on Nick Pivetta?
I like it here. And I got up for YouTube because we can no longer stream on X, unfortunately. Thanks a lot, Elon. Twitter, whatever. I hate that I even just called it X. But number one in Stuff Bus, 50 innings pitched for starting pitchers on this nice graphic by Brooks_Gate. Brooks Gate, the greatest Twitter account. Nick Pivetta, number one for the second half. So that's incredible stuff. And yeah, he seems like a teaser along with one of the guys that I have in my bold prediction, one of the guys who has had the worst luck as far as their actual ERA figures, right? As far as their actual process not being reflective and being the ERA being overstated in that sense, compared to their process stats like strikeout rate, walk rate. So yeah, I would expect I expect a big second half from Pivetta, maybe similar to what we saw last year, right? Like think about the second half he had last year. It was impressive. So
yeah, and that's, we'll see where it goes, Steve. I think that he's definitely been unlucky, and we'll see how it runs. But the stuff, all of that looks like it's there, and if he can tap into the slider, which I know is what's been Nick's knock on him as well, then that's even more icing on the cake for what he could put together. So let's swing it over to you, Steve, and we'll just kind of go back and forth here. What's bold prediction number one for you?
All right, my first bold prediction is that Paul Skeens wins the NL Cy Young. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's not bold enough just because he did just start the All-Star game. That would have been a cool bold prediction that you could already hit on.
Oh man, who would have ever predicted?
But I think that the only thing that's sort of holding him back is the innings question. But I don't know if it's as much of a question as it should be, considering he threw 129 innings pitched between college and the minors in 2023. And those innings in the like there was games in the minors where he threw 120 pitches. Like those guys were trying to win a College World Series. Like you see all these crazy pitch counts in college because they care about obviously keeping their guys healthy, but they're not going to stick to this strict inning count like these MLB teams do, where they have a massive investment to protect. Skeens was done with that LSU after last year, so they're going to try and win. And my point is that he's had high stress, high pitch count innings games that he hasn't really even had yet. So like. His 129 innings last year were more stressful than the 93.2 innings that he's had this year, 93 and 2/3 innings that he's had this year. Like, I don't think 60 is out of the question. 60 more innings.
Yeah, that's where ATC's got him.
Yeah, and I think if Paul Skeens has 150 innings of a 35% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate with a 2 ERA, that's the Cy Young.
Yeah, I'm trying to think just across. Let's check it out here. So let's go to pitching. Looking at strikeout.
So Snell won it with 180 innings last year. Verlander 175 the year before. Corbin Burns won it with 167 in 2021. I'll skip over 2020. And then before that, the lowest was like Snell again in 2018 with 180. So maybe he needs to get closer to like the 160, 170. But, that's also like that number is going to continue to trend down. Right? Like just in the last 3 years alone, it's been 167, 175, 180. When before that, like other than Eric Gagne and like Clayton Kershaw with 198 in 2014, you've had to have had over 200 innings to win the Cy Young, essentially.
Yeah. That's it. And I was looking at NL pitchers. So it's Chris Sale and Zach Wheeler are the only two whose odds are shorter, but they are quite a bit shorter. So Sale plus
Skeens is plus 500.
Yeah.
Sale, So, you get almost, close to triple or 4 times the odds on Skeens. Maybe it's not bold enough, the fact that he's plus 500.
No,
but
I mean it's an excuse for us to talk about Paul Skeens.
Exactly.
I mean,
and honestly, I think that the innings risk is real, which makes it a bit bold.
But I would rather have them. I mean, clearly they're capping innings per start with the whole no-hitter poll. I would almost, for fantasy purposes, and even for like a Cy Young reason, I would rather that. I mean, not that particular example. Obviously, that sucks, but I would rather them, give them an early hook at like 80 innings and let them pitch through the season. You know what I mean? Or
80 pitches. Yeah. Which they've done that. And I mean, the fact that he pitched in the All-Star game, I'm sure they could make it, his next start won't be till like Tuesday or whatever. I don't know exactly when he's scheduled to pitch next. I'll look that up right now, but that's sort of a break in itself, right? He's scheduled to go on the 20th, which is so that's Saturday. So a little bit surprising there.
Yeah, that's pretty quick
for me at least. But maybe that was the problem before he was announced to be the starter there in the All-Star game. Maybe they move it back a day or two, but still, hey, I mean, he threw 1 inning in a week essentially, right?
And a 1, 2, 3, 4 inning there with Soto.
There was a walk. There was a walk there, right? Yeah.
Most covered walk of all time.
Yeah.
No, it's a good one, Steve. I like it. And I think honestly it's a fun bet to make as well, so that you've got a cheering interest in Paul.
Oh yeah, I think that's a nice way to get a decent odd on a someone that has the numbers and stuff to win the Cy Young.
Yeah. Well, let's jump back over my second one. Man, this one hits home, Steve, and you know it well from our WAF listener league. It is that Ben Rice is a top 3 catcher in the second half. Now, let me lead off by saying I am welcoming all apologies from the WAF listener league for bullying me, cyber bullying me for 112 fab bid a week before he had the 3-homer game.
What was the run up there? That was the main reason why there was a bullying.
Because my fab bid was 112 and I think the runner up was $0.
There was no cover. There was no cover.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So it was
I'm looking it up right now.
A massive overpay, no question.
No, there was a cover. It was $15. It was a $15 bet.
I mean, come on, guys. Yeah. I mean, that was you can give me a little
only overbid by $97. Yeah,
that was the liveliest that the thread has been like all season, and it was peppering me about Ben Rice. And now here we are, guys. Here we are. And Steve, if you can pull up the chart, I just want to show the folks here. This is eye-opening to me. It's basically, again, looking at the pitcher list, hitter ability charts. If you filter 180 pitches faced, Ben Rice is like coming in right around number 10 in the league in power metrics. But what's almost more impressive than that is what the rest of his line looks like, whether it's like strike zone judgment, decision value, even the like contact, which is middling at like 95. Some of these things look like his contact number is actually higher than Juan Soto's.
A lot higher than Nolan Gorman, which is like I think would be a fair comp, right? But
totally. And Gorman's is 69. Ben Rice's is 95. But you look at the power, it's 133. which is above a guy or right at the same clip as like Giancarlo Stanton. So yeah, small sample, but what he was doing in the minors was also really impressive with 15 homers in 60 innings. Or I'm sorry, 60 games. So yeah, I'm really excited about Ben Rice. I think it's a nice blend of pretty good plate discipline, but solid contact and underrated pop that's kind of custom made for that ballpark with the Yankees. He's leading off and hitting cleanup, and he's also DHing. So yeah, I just think this could be one where, going back to the start of the season, I was all hopeful that Austin Wells would be our Yankee catcher that kind of broke out, but I think we're going to see it with Ben Rice. We're already starting to, and what the detractors could say is like, yeah, but he's got a 228 average. That's come with a 222 BABIP, and in 60 games in the minors this season, AA, AAA, it's, I didn't do the exact numbers, but it's around like a 270, 275 average. So I've got aspirations here, Steve. I think Ben Rice, I don't have him in my home league. I wish that I did. And I would just say, I think this has got a real shot at being a top 3 catcher, which I think is bold.
Small sample size alert, but minimum 50 batted ball events. Ben Rice is what as far as barrels per plate appearance in the majors?
I don't even have it up in front of me. Is it top 10?
It's 3. So Judge, Ohtani, Ben Rice, Juan Soto. Sure, he has, a fourth of those batted ball events. Maybe even like closer to a fifth than some of the guys with like 280, like Ohtani, but it's still 60. So it's a meaningful sample, right? We talk about that sort of 50 batted ball event sort of threshold where you can start to actually, weight the number that is taken, the observed number more than what the projection would be, or the regression would be to league average, right? So it's not to say that he's going to carry a 13% barrel rate the rest of the way, which would be insane, but we've seen enough that he is an above average power, and he has above average power. It's a great park. It's a great lineup. The Yankees also just went through a horrific stretch there in July, and like the world is just crashing down in New York and sports radio, and here's 2022 again for the Yankees. They're so cheap, but I think it might be a little bit different. I think they'll have a better second half than he did in 2022, at least, considering they have Soto now this time too. But looking at his Savant page, like all his sliders, it's not just barrel rate. Like the average exit velocity is good. The XWOB was really good. 277 XBA to go along with that 228 average, right? Yeah, the launch angle sweet spot, the squared up percentage, chase rate's really good. Doesn't strike out too much. It's, 23% strikeout rate is doable, and he walks. So there's a good profile in here, and I think the Yankees have something here. In the short term, at least, and possibly in the long term too. He looks like a good player.
Yeah, and seems like Yankee through and through, and already kind of winning the crowd there, which is, it's subjective, but it's also one that I'm rolling in with this bold prediction of top 3. So, yeah, Steve, take it away for number 2 for you.
Yeah. So my number 2. So just to recap, that was your prediction. The actual prediction was Ben Rice finishing at the top 3 catcher, right?
In the second half. Yep.
All right. So my second bold prediction is also tied to my chalkboard, and I think if this does happen, my chalkboard will actually hit. But that's Vlad Jr. finishes with 35 homers. On the surface, Vlad Jr. looks fine. Like I was sitting here complaining about him in April after how dreadful that April was. He's been fine. Among first basemen, he's ranked 7th on the Razzball player rater, which is okay. He's probably drafted more of like 2 or 3. He's at 288, 361, 456. Yeah, the 288 and the 361 are really good. You would like that 456 to be closer to like 500.
Just an 815 OPS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just an
that's the
815
killer.
OPS. But I mean, relative to the league, that's still pretty good in this environment, right? Like his WRC plus is really good. That takes into account walks. It's 133. I'm trying to pull up his OPS plus. I'll get that on Baseball Reference real quick. But the reason why I'm making this bold prediction is because I think the power is going to come, and I have a few charts here for up on YouTube and for the stream if you want to watch it, to show that I think is coming. Yeah, it's a 130 OPS plus, so that OPS is 30% better than league average, which is pretty crazy considering that it's just the 14 homers, and 20 doubles. But I think power's coming. If you look at his rolling average, the ISO, pull percentage, and fly ball percentage are all trending up. There's a nice rolling graph here from Fangraphs that just show that there was, also a point too where he was hitting a lot of fly balls, and the ISO didn't come with it. It's starting to come down. That was kind of coincided with a bit of a dip in his pull percentage, but it looks like all three of those things are happening simultaneously, which is exciting for Vlad owners.
And he went nuts too, right, Steve? Wasn't it
Yeah.
like 6 homers in 8
In,
games or something like that?
in June, he had a 290 ISO, which was the highest ISO for any month for him since 2021, the year when he had like 41 homers. Yeah, I don't think Vlad is ever going to be that guy, that 40 homer guy. Maybe, in the year where he just has insane bad ball luck, or, has just enough homers, a bunch of them, he can get close to 40. But I think he's a true talent, 30 to 35 homer hitter. And despite the fact that he just has 14 in the first, in the first, whatever, 55% of the season, since we're a little bit more than that. He's one more of those stretches away from being on pace for 35, and I think he can get there. It ticked back down a little bit in June, but it was just only a few games here in the before the break, and he did homer in the last game before the All-Star break. And if you look at the rolling charts, power metric for Vlad, there's just been an insane spike up, even into July, which makes it think that there's some more good luck and good trends coming his way. Like the season average is above average. It's 10% better than above average, but for the rolling batted ball events, for the last 2 weeks, it's been well above average, like the Vladdy of 2021. Yeah, I don't think he'll keep that up the whole year, but I think he'll do enough to hit a lot more homers in the second half, especially as the weather heats up there.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what you love to see is, for him to just get beyond that Freddie Freeman range power wise. You know what I mean? Because the hit tool is so good that to me there's such a big difference between 30,
and he hits the ball so hard. It's
and
just
yeah.
Like the barrel rate is there. Like he's among qualified hitters, he's like 20th in barrel rate. Like it's there. 19th between guys like Teoscar Hernandez, JD Martinez, Rafael Devers, Austin Riley. Like it's sluggers. The barrel rate in 2021 was like 10%. He's at 9% right now. So it's close for him. It's close to happening,
Well, this is a good, I think it's properly bold though, because at 14, he would have to basically go on a 40 homer pace to get to 35. So it is bold, but I like it, Steve. And these line charts are music to my ears because he's another guy that is rostered on my home league team. So yeah, if all these happen, I'll be in great shape. So yeah, knock on wood. Let's keep the good vibes going. I got one more because all you care. I got one more on my home league, but this one is one that I'm really thinking would light the fantasy industry on fire. If he breaks out, we'll talk about it right after this ad break. Okay, so Steve, my final one is O'Neal Cruz. And I know we've been talking that Ellie is kind of taken all the hype and become the player that we once were hoping O'Neal Cruz would be. But he had kind of a quiet first half here with the 246 average, 14 homers, 7 steals. But what's crazy, the bold prediction I got here is that he finally goes off for a 900 OPS in the second half. I know that doesn't seem that like unattainable for how much just raw power he has, but we have yet to see a half season of baseball from him where he's had an 800 OPS or higher. And again, this and the what we've seen to date this season, it's a 737 OPS. So I think what you're excited about here is one, the barrel rate's at 17.9%. So it's also up there, bright red on the slider pages, all that good stuff. I also like that he's second in the league on those bat speed acceleration metrics that Kyle Bland was breaking down with us. I know Elliot Ramos is number one on that list, and we saw him kind of go off in the first half. And I think it's a really good sign that Cruz doesn't just have this like, Stantonian long swing, but can't or fast swing, but it's also long and it's not like high acceleration. Cruz, that looks like it's in the right spot. The last thing with Cruz, speaking on rolling charts, both his contact and power. Now I'm intentionally ignoring the plate discipline ones because he does need to improve that. He's north of 30% strikeout rate. That's probably hurting the OBP, which is hurting the OPS. But his contact got up in the last month to around MLB average. And for a guy who hits the ball as hard as he does, you were just talking about how Vlad spiked up to have like a 125 or like 25% above league average power. O'Neal Cruz lives at 125 on the MLB power. So what he spiked to in the last month was closer to like 35%. I mean, at that point, you're talking about a guy who's like top 3 in terms of like PLV power metrics in the game. So I really think that 14 homer rate we could see that, go off to where he could, that's another one that could end up being like a 35, 40 homer guy. And I just think he's due for the breakout. I think he's been quietly productive and starting to warm up. So yeah, that's my last one here is that O'Neal Cruz finally kind of lives up to the hype, and we see a 900 OPS from him in the second half.
Yeah, I would love to see it. He's on my home league team, so that would be music to my ears if that happens. To sort of push back a little bit, I'll cite 2 things. One is his production versus lefties. He's hitting 148, 179, 450 with 29 strikeouts and 81 at-bats versus lefties. That said, something that might help O'Neal Cruz finish with the 900 OPS in the second half. He isn't playing that much versus lefties recently, and they also bat him lower in the lineup versus lefties. Part of the reason why I think they're not playing as much versus lefties is that he is battling injuries. He seems to be nicked up. Like there was some talk about his ankle from last year still not being 100%. And maybe it won't be until next year. There's also just some talk about like it being something like that could bother him for his career, which is kind of scary. But we do talk about a lot on this show about how potentially the second year back after a big injury like that is when you want to invest in the player. So that could be true too. But hey, I mean, if they do rest him versus tough lefties, that should help the overall slash line, because the slash line versus righties is 280, 341, 837. So
That's true.
Really good.
It's a sneaky way to make the bold prediction come true.
Yeah. Which, isn't necessarily the worst thing. Yeah, sure. It's annoying that he doesn't play versus lefties, and he obviously could hit a homer or two. He does have 3 homers off lefties this year too. But yeah, I'm just slightly concerned because of that lefty production. And
no, it's a good point.
He also had a hamstring injury, I think, recently that he sat a few games for. He did come back and play the last few games in the break, and did have a homer on July as recently as July 8th. But there is a ton of strikeouts. There's still, there's 7 stolen bases too, which is a good indicator of health there, and only one caught stealing. It definitely is bold in that sense for me, but I would love to see it happen. He's one of the most fun and probably the guy. Like, I think he's sort of surpassed the. I know Stan's having a great year too, but whenever O'Neal Cruz hits a home run at home, it seems like it's like far into the Allegheny River. So he's kind of like the Statcast darling of like long home runs for me, at least now.
Yeah, when you see that he hit one, you go straight out to Twitter to actually watch the shot and everything. So yeah, that's mine. So Steve, let's swing back to you for bold prediction, third and final for the second half of the season.
Yeah, my this is another guy who I've talked about a lot on this show. Pablo Lopez. It's that Pablo Lopez finishes as a top 5 starting pitcher for the rest of the season. He is currently 183 on the Razzball Player Rater. That's the 51st starting pitcher. But it's the second best strikeout minus walk rate of his career, right behind last year. He's had bad luck with homers. A 1.56 homer per 9 is the worst of his career and definitely an outlier. It's the worst left on base percentage of his career at 65.5%. So yeah, a lot of the luck metrics are not on Pablo Lopez's side, and I just think he is way better than his greater than 5 ERA, a 5.11 ERA. Every indicator is in the mid 3s. Like, there's not much process that's different from Lopez this year to last year. Like, he's 8th in the league in strikeout minus walk. Around guys like Dylan Cease, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Tanner Bybee, George Kirby, Freddie Peralta, Cole Reagans are the guys immediately around him. All guys that are good pitchers. Maybe you expect a little bit higher of an ERA from Dylan Cease, but he also has a walk rate that's 2 full percentage points higher than Pablo Lopez. It's the best walk rate of Pablo Lopez's career at 5.3%. The 28% strikeout rate is still really good. It's not as amazing as last year, but it's still elite, right? It's among qualified starting pitchers, it's 11th, right in between Luis Gil and Hunter Green. Like, this is just an unlucky pitcher. I think it's still a great buy low. Sure, like the ground ball rate is like the thing that gives me the most sort of concern, and maybe that's a bit of reason why his left on base percentage is a little bit higher, because when you do start to mix a strikeout rate and then a 45% ground ball rate, that's when you can get like the runs that Pablo goes on of sub 2 ERAs for a half. But ground ball rate's noisy. Maybe that is still coming in the second half. It still shouldn't lead to a left on base percentage, 11% below where he was at last year in the last few years. So I still think Pablo is a great buy low.
Definitely agree on the buy low, but I do think it's appropriately bold, because to me the worry is not that he's buy low. The left on base definitely looks like unlucky, but just for the amount of for how inflated his ERA is, you would hope to see that like the homer per fly ball was like through the roof, and it's all it's 2.5% higher than what it's been, and so that's like the only. And then you of course look over and you're like, okay, well he's giving up more fly balls. He's giving up less ground balls. So yeah, I mean, you said it, and a little bit more hard contact. Yeah, but overall, we're not going to see, like, where's his ERA right now? Is it in the
5.11?
Jesus, yeah,
5.11.
Yeah, so like the rest of the way, I'm with the projections that like have or the indicators where it's more like a 3.77 ERA the rest of the way. But I think it would have to be even better than that to be a top 5 pitcher, which is what makes it a bold prediction. But I think it's a good one, Steve. What's I think next week we were talking about doing the strength of schedule one. That's the other thing.
That would be a good
a lot
one
of
to
times
look
the
at.
Twins.
Yeah.
Although this year it's a little bit different.
Yeah, they did play the White Sox a bunch. I saw, there was an article on Fangraphs today. I think they were like 8-1 versus the White Sox. So maybe not as many games versus the White Sox in the second half, which is kind of kind of tough, but
We'll
who
have to look at
knows?
that one. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift over, Steve, to look at the chalkboard pick. I guess real quick, let's recap then the bold predictions. So
Mhm.
my 3 bold predictions were Nick Pivetta is a top 10 starting pitcher in the second half. Ben Rice is a top 3 catcher in the second half, and O'Neal Cruz has a 900 OPS in the second half. Steve, you had Paul Skeens winning Cy Young. Vlad finishes with 35 homers, and Pablo Lopez is a top 5 starting pitcher for rest of season. So that's the second half split there as well, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
For the second half. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump over to Chalkboard. And for those of you guys who don't have the background, we've done this for a few years, but at the start of the season, we do our Chalkboard picks in the spirit of accountability. We basically make 3 targets, 3 fades that we believe will finish 20% higher or lower than their average draft position in March. And we monitor it the whole season. We kind of keep the scoreboard. It's always been a lot of fun. Steve and I have almost comically taken turns at who's been good and bad. I think it was year 1, I was great. Year 2, Steve was great. Year 3, we were both mid. And so far, Steve, it looks like we are both a little mid across the board. But I'll start with my targets and then we'll swing to your targets. But I had Jung-Hoo Lee, who I was very excited about at the time. I know this is kind of a Van Burnett brand guy here with like the play discipline, the contact skills, the underrated runs scored. And, the injury completely wrecked this, so we don't need to spend a ton of time on it. But what we did see, the power, I think he even had some early homers where I was definitely guilty of the too early victory lap because I thought it was looking really good. And then he got ice cold. I thought we had South Korean Ichiro here with the way their swings literally look side by side, and just some of the like 60 grade speed I was hoping would translate. I thought this would be Quan with more homer steal appeal, and just with the hit tool. But yeah, we did not see it, and even the average was like around a 260, so pretty ho hum. And this one missed. Even looking at like the average rank, it wasn't anywhere close to like the 200 that it needed to be. So that was one target. The next one that I completely whiffed on, no pun intended, was AJ Puck, who thought, looking back at my rationale, it's killing me, Steve. Like I was basically saying that, he's what we've been waiting Shane Baz to be and all this stuff. And then,
the spring hype on AJ Puck was real. It's easy to forget.
He had
the
like
Garrett Crochet and Jared Jones work, but there's also the AJ Puck one. That's sort of the little prawn at the limmer. Like, yeah, sure, I'll just take one of whoever's there, AJ Puck, Crochet, and Jones.
Right.
I like all these guys. Like, how wrong were you if you ended up with Puck by dumb luck?
Exactly. So that was a 370 ADP, and it had to move up to 308. It has been 648, and Puck is back in the bullpen, as we all know. Marcell Ozuna was the hit, though. That was the third one, and this was ADP of 146 that needed to move up to 121 or better. And Ozuna so far is 8 on the Razzball player rater, with just where we thought last year would be the career year with the 40 homers. He's already at 26 and a 303 batting average to go with it. So if you remember the narrative from last season, that first month he was so bad that he kind of hit 300 the rest of the way with all those homers. And it looks like that's just the player Ozuna has been for pretty much 8 months now of, like his last 8 months of playing baseball, he has been a 340 homer guy. So it really is probably time we start viewing Ozuna as like kind of a Yordan Alvarez type of hitter, which is insane to say, but like, what else do you need to see? Everything looks phenomenal in terms of his batted ball data. And it's not like he hasn't done this at some point in his career. It's just, it was way back in, 2019, 2017, where he was up there in the high 30s. In the shortened 2020 season, he had 18 homers, which was amongst the best in the league. So yeah, Ozuna, my take was just obviously, people aren't a huge fan of the guy. There was the util tag, and I thought it was just falling way, way too far. And so this one does look good, even though the other two look terrible. But Steve, if you want to weigh in on any of those, otherwise, you go ahead and give your rundown on year 3.
I do want to weigh in yours first. Ozuna, I think we've mentioned before. It seems like the classic, older hitter, undervalued, DH, util only, clogs your util guy that is just, the JD Martinez, the David Ortiz of years past, just undervalued. And he'll probably be undervalued again this year, like because he's util next year heading into drafts, because he's util only, because he's older, just because of the unfortunate,
Yep. They'll
off the
move him
field
up to
stuff with
like,
him.
his ADP will
Yeah.
be like in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. 80 to 60, and it'll be a value there. As far as Jung Ho Lee goes, it would have been nice to see how he adjusted back, because he did start out really well, got really cold. Defense looked great in center field, was going to get everyday playing time for the Giants. Would have been interesting to see once he made that adjustment back after that first, cold streak. He kind of got hurt as that was in the middle of that process happening. For AJ Puck, I know we're out of bold predictions, but I think you still may win that one if he wins the closer job. He's looked really good in relief. It looks like, Tanner Scott is probably going to be traded, and I would not be surprised if AJ Puck is the closer. He's been really, really good in relief.
June and July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, 15 saves in the second half with a good ERA and a lot of strikeouts.
Could sneak in there. Yeah.
He could definitely finish higher than 308 in the Razzball player rater with that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the hope there, Steve. It's a good note. In June and July, he was back to above a strikeout per inning, and the ratios finally were back in check with like around a 2 ERA, sub 1 WHIP. So great,
you
great
take
point
that
he's turning around.
That is a closer. Yeah, there you go.
All right, well, Steve, why don't you rattle off your targets and kind of how they're going so far this season?
All right, yeah. So my first target was Vlad. He was the 30th ADP, and so he needed to finish top 24. He's currently at 57th. Talked about him a bunch. Like, he's been fine. Like, it's been totally okay. It's just the sort of power is a bit lacking, but for reasons mentioned earlier on the show, I believe that's starting to come around and could continue to come around. My second target is one that we'll talk about with your fades, is Bobby Miller. He was 69th in ADP, so he would need to finish 55 or above on the player rater. Yikes. He is currently 1035. I will say, though, I think that there is some, and I know Rates and Barrels has been talking about this a lot, but like finding the next Hunter Brown, there's no reason in my mind why Bobby Miller can't do that. Unless there's like some sort of shoulder injury that requires surgery, that he's just like sort of pushing through and maybe not being fully honest. I don't want to even say that. It's just based on pure speculation. But maybe he's not fully healthy. Because if you do remember it, I remember your text when Bobby Miller came out and shoved on his first start with like 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, and looked unbelievable.
That's true.
And then the next game versus the Cubs, he came out in the first inning, struck out the side, looked unbelievable again. And then literally, like, he must have gotten hurt that inning with the shoulder, because he completely lost the plate. And even in his return and rehab and the starts back, he just does not have the command. Yeah, the velocity's down like a tick or two, and people want to talk about that. But from someone that's watched all of Miller's starts this year, he literally looks like, basically like a Rick Ankiel light, that he's just not even knowing where the ball is going. Like, he's finding the plate, but it's nowhere near the intended target. It's like not even like the Rays approach would fix him to like hit one target or whatever. There's just
right.
no command whatsoever, which makes me worry a bit about the injury. But if there's something mechanically off, or if they tweak that, and I know he was going to take time away from the team and then get some AAA starts and work with a pitching coach. So it's the kind of guy that I like. If he's dropped in like a deeper-ish league, like, and you have a spot, or if you have like an NA spot, I would be stashing Bobby Miller for sure. just because I think it could be sort of that Hunter Brown type of thing, as long as there is no injury. It's a little bit more concerning because Hunter Brown didn't have that injury. It was just more, okay, we got to figure out what's going on. Hunter Brown made all these changes, moving on the mound, adding a pitch, changing his scripts, doing all this. Like, that's easy to do when you're not hurt. And technically it's easier to bet on the stuff like you could have with Hunter Brown. With Bobby Miller, you can bet on the stuff, but you have to also bet that he's healthy. My other target was Francisco Alvarez, another one that's sort of lost to injury here. He's been really good when he's been in, but he was at ADP 143, needed to finish as 116. He's currently at 458, so would need to have a pretty big second half to even come close to that. But I'm still interested in Alvarez, like his. I don't know where if he still had that up, but like his per game.
Yeah, the setting I got, is it's more than just 5x5 settings, but yeah, on average on this league setting, it's like he's listed at like rank 200. But you're right, it's better than that.
Yeah, 21st catcher like on a per game basis. So
gotcha. Yeah,
yeah,
at a 296 average and an 844 OPS, it's like
I'm hoping there was some more power, but I mean, we saw what Alvarez did when he came up last year. Like, if there's a guy that can go scorched earth, it's Francisco Alvarez, and with that catcher eligibility, that gets weighted a lot more, like the position value. So, a 10 homer month from him is sort of all you kind of need there. So, not fully disappointed, and think that possibly Vlad and Francisco Alvarez could end up being winners. Maybe a little bit more work needed and a little more luck for Alvarez. But if Vlad does follow through on my power predictions, I could see that happening.
Well, it was a thumb sprain in.
Yeah, he had surgery. He missed like a month and a half there for Alvarez. So
yeah,
a lot of time.
When he came back in June, yeah, we did see 3 homers, but now he's been on a power drought, throughout July. So yeah, we need him to bounce back on power. But yeah, I still think at 22, this is spiritually not a loss. It's just injury, and that's a little tough. So we'll get into our fades as well, guys, but we got to take our second ad break, and we'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, we already mentioned Bobby Miller. I kind of zigged where the industry zagged on fading there, and I think it was less about the guy and the stuff. I like the extension and the fastball velocity, and like I know he kind of wowed everyone with the amount of good pitches in the arsenal. My stance on it was a little bit more like, are we anointing him too soon? From a game log standpoint, he had never shown the dominance that, to your point, Steve, the first game of the season, I think that might have been my text to you, is like, there's the
game log. Yeah.
Right. But it just, sometimes I do feel like as an industry, and it hits sometimes, but it's like there's a little bit of groupthink. Not that it's not from a place of this guy's a stud, but it's almost like the battle of planting the flag harder than anyone else around.
Yeah, I get that.
Turns someone from a true early investment pick of like 115 or so. Like, I wouldn't have guessed Bobby Miller was going to have an 8 ERA. You know what I mean? So I'm going to temper my victory lap here, but it was more just I was out on the price, which is why he only had to finish outside of the top 83 players for this to technically hit for mine. But the other ones I missed on were Lane Thomas at an ADP of 108. I needed that to scoot back to 130. He is 104 on the player rater. And then Hunter Green, which I would say even quietly, Steve, I know he had not the best all-star game, giving up the jack there, but Hunter Green's ADP was 140, and I had him going back to one outside of the 168, and he's 93 so far this season, which is also, I probably would have told you, he either would have been top 50 or outside of the top 200, and he's actually just been solid with a 334 ERA, a 111 whip. And you're getting the strikeouts with him. He's got 126 and 110 innings. I think I was just going to say, where are the walks with that being such an issue? 9.9% walk rate.
It's the worst walk rate of his career, the worst strikeout rate of his career. And what do you know? That's all you needed for the breakout to happen, right? And finally, the year that I'm not all in on Hunter Green.
Uh-huh.
The old never wrong, just early. So Bobby Miller next year, mark it down. It's just crazy. Like everything is worse, but everything is better all at the same time.
The results. The results.
The results are, and that's what we care about, right? We don't have. I don't know about you, but I don't play in a league with swing strike rate as a category.
Not yet. No.
But the Bauer rate is way down. It's cut in half. And I know these things aren't predictive, but there's something to be said about especially Green that had a fastball that was squared up and gave up a ton of homers and has a walk issue. But if you can cut your homers per nine from 1.72 to 1.53 to 0.82, when you can strike out the world and still have a really good strikeout rate, but you do have a walk problem, like that is going to be key. And if you have to sacrifice a little swing and miss, a little bit of stuff, a little bit of velocity to avoid that, like you do it. And that seems to be the case that's happening for Hunter Green. Like whatever he's been doing, he's figured it out and found a way to like get the most out of his stuff. Like he had stuff to sacrifice, right? Like if there's any pitcher in the world that has stuff to sacrifice, and it's not even like it's that far off. Like the overall stuff plus is the same as it was last year.
What's kind of weird, Steve, is he was such a PLV darling in the past to a point where I remember Nick was surprised about Hunter Green on PLV when he actually rolled it out. I think it was like the number one player where he's like, PLV absolutely loves him.
Yeah, like it almost like gave him some hesitation, right?
Right. But then he actually, he got excited.
Yeah.
He got excited. And this year, that's not the case. His PLA is 141st in the majors. And like just some of the stuff, let's see. Oh, okay. So his PLA is a 357. That first year was a 324. So it's come down a little bit. But yeah, 29th percentile, that ERA based on PLV. And then, you're still seeing a 93rd percentile swinging strike rate. But like the ground ball rate is terrible. Yeah. It's so strange, man.
I don't know. It's
a deep
like
dive.
if I didn't like look at if I didn't watch any games or just like didn't look at the actual ERA and just looked at the underlying and I'd be like, oh my God, like Hunter Green's having the worst season of his career. Like even the 30% strikeout rate is down a little bit, so you don't even get that. But there's something to be said about. I don't want to sound like too curmudgeon-y and like an old scout, like the scouts that Brad Pitt fires in Moneyball. But like there's something to be said about learning how to pitch and not just throw. It's an old cliche, but maybe that's something that Hunter Green's figuring out and learning how to do. He's learning how to pitch before our eyes.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it's one that we'll have to keep our eyes and ears out a little bit too. I mean, it is a 233 BABIP, so I think we're going to see some regression.
Yeah, and the home run per fly ball rate, like I would expect some regression there too, especially in Cincinnati in the summer.
Yeah, so we'll see. But either way, and then Lane Thomas was the other one who has just kind of shut me up. I know you brought up when I brought him up that he's a guy who can kind of defy, the savant metrics and everything, because he definitely gets the most out of his pulls and everything. But the big thing that's helping him the most on the player rater is the 23 steals is fourth in the majors.
Yeah, I don't think people expected that.
Yeah, and just a 252 average, 8 homers, like those are fine, right? But
but when it comes with that package,
the speed, it's the speed plus non-zero. So
he's attempted to run 32 times too. The Nationals just run crazy.
But Steve, why don't you round us out with your fades here if you want to rush through them?
Yeah, so I had Asturi Ruiz. He was 120 ADP, so he needs to finish below 144. He's at 760 right now. So that's a win. I had Adley, who was at ADP 53. I need to fall to 63. He's at 55.
So did James, by the way, our guest. Remember, he had Adley
James.
too.
Yeah. And Adley, if you paid up for catcher, you paid up for William Contreras or Adley, you're happy. So like even the spirit of it, like if he was at 64, it kind of would be an L, I think, for me. In spirit. And then I have Framber Valdez, who's at 56. Need to go to 67. He's at 201. I did not expect him to be ranked that poorly. But hey, I'll take it. I don't have any shares. But I mean, for me, Esteury Ruiz was like the easiest call. Like it's just whoever's the steal only guy. Which is kind of why I pushed back a little on Lane Thomas, because he did show a bit of pop. More so, like, you wouldn't see it in the Savant page, but more so in like the actual results and sort of being a pull fly ball guy, having that hitter friendly home park in the summer, especially in Washington. So, steal only guys in the middle rounds are just the easiest fade for me. I think I've won on like every year.
Miles Straw, Jake McCarthy. That is definitely.
I've won every time. It's a cheat code. So yeah, but Fromber's been a lot better. I mean, it's close to 4 ERA. The strikeout rate's, the worst of his career.
He had that one magnificent start because he is on my home league. But
and the ground ball rate's back up. Home run fly ball rate's kind of a bit inflated.
You should go back to that Stuff Plus chart though, Steve, because what's crazy to me is he's just after his Stuff Plus is the same as Paul Skeens and Luis Heel. That is nuts. I would never.
I think it's the sinker could be a bit of a model breaker one way or the other too. He has a really good changeup too. I'll look at the individual pitch stuff numbers.
Something's broken there
in a second
because he is not Paul Skeens or Luis.
Yeah, it's the curveball that has a really it's 128 Stuff Plus. So really, really good there. Like the fastball and the sinker, the fastball is a 63 Stuff Plus, which is kind of tough. But the sliders above average, the curveball and the changeup are really good for Stuff Plus. So that's where that's coming from. I kind of like Framber rest of the season more. I wish there'd be more strikeouts, but the ground ball rate is back up, and that's what his bread and butter is. So
and his last start, granted it was against Miami, but 10 strikeouts in 7 innings. So it's like at least there's a glimpse of it, and recency bias to go with that. But well, that's great, man. This is fun. I know we've done a couple of recap shows looking back when this is kind of the final deep breath before the plunge, where we're going to be scratching and clawing for waiver wire ads and looking at advantages with the strength of schedule and all that stuff. So it was good to have one more kind of zoomed out episode here, looking at the bold predictions and the chalkboard. But any closing thoughts from your side?
I mean, we're going to be in this dog days home stretch, before we know it, right? So I'm glad we're going to do the tease out next week as sort of a strength of schedule sort of guide and primer. It's one of your favorite topics, and great idea that you always have and that we always do each year. That's been super, super helpful. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to the start of the unofficial second half, but when you do splits, hey, this is what breaks up the second half. So in a way it is sort of official, but and this is where we get guys that people start to check out and go to fantasy football, and there's players that go under the radar that, I think Scott White does it, right? Like an article every year, like what you missed when you started to pay attention to fantasy football or football in the second half. Like there's going to be pitcher, like, Cole Reagan's last year.
Cole Reagan's.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example on the hitting side recently. But there's breakout second half hitters that go even more under the radar because people
Mhm.
check out of
Even
teams.
even ads. I mean, remember that one year, like Eloy was dropped, and then he had 16 homers in the second
Yeah.
half,
Oh
or
yeah.
like you
Oh
know,
yeah.
just stuff like that. That's just kind of wacky. People get
Absolutely.
fed up with guys,
Absolutely.
or people get called up. I can't remember if like the one that's standing out, but I feel like it might have been earlier in the season. Was remember when Reese Hoskins got the call and he had like 10 homers in 11
Yeah.
games,
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, I feel like he's had that sort of run
Yeah.
for a bunch, right? Like
Hmm.
there's always guys in the second half that go even more under the radar just because, um, you know, there's less people paying attention. Baseball starts and or football starts and guys sort of check out.
Yeah, here
Uh,
it is. Here it is. In 2017, Reese Hoskins gets called up in August and has 11 homers and an 1149 OPS in his first month in the majors.
yeah, yeah,
Just going nuts. Yeah.
it's
So
great. It's crazy what could happen, and who knows who it's going to be um, this year. But these sort of runs happen all the time.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll
So
have to do a stash episode too. So yeah, very
yeah,
much looking forward to trying to give all of our teams the slightest edge down the home stretch. But thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry about the live stream. We're going to be exploring that, but or how to do the
check it
live
out on YouTube
on
if you want
Twitter.
to watch it. Yeah,
But
got
yes, if you want to see our mugs out on YouTube, otherwise you guys can follow us on Twitter at Wins Above Pod. I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. That wraps us up for episode 148, guys. As always, thanks for talking baseball with us.
Thanks for listening, guys. Later.